This is Eric Hess with the Encrypted Economy. For today's episode, we've got none other than Scott Purcell, CEO of Prime Trust. Now, this is our first video podcast. So if you're seeing it on YouTube, you're seeing the video. Now, Prime Trust probably doesn't need much of an introduction either. 1.5 billion plus in monthly transactions. For crypto, 12 billion in settlements thus far, and more than 3.4 million counterparty transactions. In crowdfunding, processing more than 650 million invested, with 640,000 transactions and 648 offerings. For their financial infrastructure offering, they've got more than 140 API customers, 22 billion funds processed, and 600,000 anti-money laundering checks. So with that, I bring you Scott Purcell, CEO of Prime Trust, in our first Encrypted Economy video podcast. And as always, if you like the podcast, please rate it, share it, and give us comments. Welcome to the Encrypted Economy, where we look at the business of regulation and security for all things encrypted, digital assets, blockchain technology, privacy, and smart contracts. Hope you'll join us while we explore these forces that are shaping the economy. All right, so Eric Hess with the Encrypted Economy. Excited to have Scott Purcell on the show. Scott is the founder, CEO of Prime Trust, which I hope the listeners are familiar with. But rather than go into Scott's background, I thought give him a chance to do it himself. Again, Scott, thanks so much for joining the Encrypted Economy.
Thanks, Eric. It's great to be on. Nice to connect again and catch up. It's fun times in Fintech.
So can you tell us a little bit about your evolution? I know you were first at Fund America and it grew and it continued to expand into where you are today, but just sort of walking us through that trajectory would be very intriguing.
Well, historically, I started my career as a fixed income trader on the institutional side. I then went on to own broker-dealer, a couple of clearing firms. I started a trust company providing services to broker-dealers and their institutional clients. Sold that to a bank, ran the trust operations for the bank. After some time, many years, I read an article about a kid named Mark Andreessen at the University of Illinois, written a graphical window on this something called the internet. Figured that was going to be the future of communications. I needed to do that. So I went on to start one of the very first commercial internet service providers. And so jump forward to November of 2011, I read about the Entrepreneurs Access to Capital Act in the House of Representatives, later to become the Jobs Act in the Senate, which you were part of. And I said, God, this can transform capital markets. And it combines securities, banking, internet technology, all of the things that I know. I need to do this. And so I started a company called Fund America, originally Arctic Island, but then changed the name to Fund America, to provide B2B services to people who are going to be in the business of helping issuers conduct online capital raises or capital raises using the internet. So we provided escrow services, trustee services, payment processing, compliance, transaction technology, cap table management, and a host of other things to the emerging crowdfunding portals, broker-dealers, real estate syndicators, and others. And so that's where, I got my start in this new generation of capital markets and fintech.
It's very exciting. I know a number of years ago was working with a client looking for a custodian, and that's how Scott and I first met. But there weren't many players at the time. And certainly Prime Trust was one of them. And certainly they've been rewarded for being one of the first movers, because today, Prime Trust, a little snapshot of where Prime Trust is today, Scott?
Oh, man. Yeah, we started Prime Trust and started the chartering process in 2016, received charter in 2017, and immediately started servicing the crowdfunding industry while adding custody services for other types of assets, specialty trustee things, counterparty settlement systems, and a variety of other things. And we began to expand out of the crowdfunding market and into the blockchain world and providing a lot of services to a number of players in that industry. Stablecoins, we service, I think, over 20 stablecoins or maybe 30 different stablecoins. A lot of crypto exchanges, OTC desks, and other participants in that with a host of specialized financial infrastructure that Prime Trust provides. And yeah, since founding 2017, 18, 19, 20, and moving into 2021, our growth is really ridiculous. A year ago we had 45 employees. Today we have 230 employees. We process billions of dollars a month in fiat for a lot of different people in the space. It's fun, exhausting, but
Yeah.
fun.
It's amazing. I mean, every time I turn around and you're wearing the "Do You Banq," that's sort of the next iteration. Certainly want to
Yep.
explore that on the podcast as well. But before we dive in, I want to just take a step back and typically ask my guests for a singular personal event in your life that shaped your values or who you are today.
A singular event. Well, it's a story that my dad tells from when I was born that has carried forward as just entrepreneurial spirit. When I was born, my parents had no college education. My dad was delivering milk in the morning and loading trucks at Sears in the afternoon. And we were in New England, and it was just a brutal winter. And my dad said, "God damn it, if I have to be cold or if I have to be poor, I don't have to be cold." And he picked up the family and moved to LA. And he became a self-made man. Over the years he did well. He could sell, and so that served him well as he clawed his way, started companies, and eventually became a very successful guy. But don't let things stand in your way. Don't take the status quo on anything. And if you're presented or you're facing certain circumstances, then pivot, do something different. And that's really a formational or foundational lesson for me.
That's great. That's excellent. So thank you. So you recently wrote a piece. I know because we talked about it and then you wrote it. So I was like, wow, that was great. But it
Yeah,
deals with.
our conversation spurred me. I was like, oh man, I need to write something about that.
So for the listenership, I'm a big fan of Scott's written word, and I look for what he writes, and I mentioned that, hey, what happened to the writing? And so we talked about things, and lo and behold, he picked up the pen again, which is
Well,
great.
there will be no new blogs for at least 8 weeks.
Yeah. If you're only listening, he's holding up a broken arm. So are you willing to share the circumstances around the broken arm for the listeners?
Yeah, we're closing on a substantial round of capital right now for Prime Trust, and our lead venture investor had myself and some of my execs for a offsite and down at a racetrack, and so we were racing cars and having fun, and I wound up in a little bit of an accident.
Oh,
broke my arm, cracked my ribs. The things you do for fun and capital.
but you got up to probably a higher speed than you previously did, right?
Yeah, I did several more laps even with my broken arm. So it was
Wow, intrepid.
determined to get
Wow.
my time down.
Scott the Warrior, that is for sure. So back to the path toward tokenizing securities. Can you share some of your experiences as to the challenges and the opportunities for tokenizing securities?
Yeah, the thing that you and I had discussed was a CEO of a very large REIT was on the phone with me, and this was a few weeks ago now. And he was telling me about how he'd spent, I don't know, a couple $1 million going through the process of figuring out how to tokenize his securities. And then as he was preparing to launch, he went out to his investors, which are all institutional given the size of the REIT, and they all said to him, okay, why? We don't care. And it just really was a wake up call for him. It was a bucket of cold water. And so he shelved the whole project and just continued to do what he's always been done. And he asked me, so why does anybody care? Why do people want to tokenize securities? Why would I do this? And so that was a very good question and very thought provoking and allowed me to kind of tee off from there.
Okay, and so where do you think the opportunities are for tokenizing securities? What are the clear opportunities?
Yeah, I'm a fan of tokenizing securities, but not in the way that people generally think about it. Tokenizing assets of any kind, whether they're securities or lending or whatever, is a really good idea for custodians. But generally, it doesn't matter for investors because investors typically don't hold assets themselves. You don't hold your shares of Apple stock yourself. You don't hold your cash yourself. You may have a little bit of money in your cash in your wallet for walking money, but a custodian holds it. Your bank holds it. Your shares of Apple stock, E-Trade or Robinhood or Schwab or whoever holds it. And for funds and institutional investors that are registered with the SEC, hedge funds, PE funds, venture funds, etc., they're required to hold assets with a qualified custodian. It's not even an option. And individuals always hold their assets with a custodian. So that won't change just because something is tokenized. That continues. But so where it comes into play is if you sell 100 shares of Apple stock and somebody at Schwab is buying the 100 shares of Apple stock, there's infrastructure, there's plumbing for the securities industry so that Schwab and Robinhood can settle that transaction between the scenes. So they can, with confidence, exchange the shares, exchange the cash, and move them into their customers' accounts, or at least ledger them into their customers' accounts. For private securities, that doesn't exist. There is no way for custodians to settle transactions between their customers or their unique customers. And tokenizing assets would allow us to do that. So Prime Trust and I don't know, and name another custodian, whether it's Robinhood on the security side, or maybe Fidelity, or Paxos on the digital side, or Anchorage, or somebody. We can then easily settle transactions between ourselves. So in one sense, we compete just like Robinhood and E-Trade compete, but on the other hand, they have to have the back end systems, the plumbing, so that they can securely settle transactions between their counterparties. And that's what tokenization will do. It will really help create the plumbing that all of the custodians like Prime Trust and like our competitors, that we can all tie into and work together collaboratively to drive this brave new world forward.
And do you see like a proliferation of new ATSs to sort of, to develop around this marketplace? Like, how do you see that evolving?
Oh, it'll be an explosion. There are a lot of ATS applications, and quite a few have gotten approved. My general counsel worked closely with the staff at the Securities Exchange Commission to get a letter on how a trust company can serve as basically the custodian for people in this sector. There's some legacy securities regulations that we had to work through, Reg R, 15C33, 15C31, and variety of things that what us security geeks are familiar with. But we did that. So we got a letter from the SEC about how to do this, because traditional clearing brokers like Pershing, Broadcourt, Clearing Corp, RBC, etc., really aren't geared to handle. It's almost impossible for them. It is impossible for them to hold private securities at scale. They can do it sort of selectively, but it's the next generation of financial infrastructure providers, which are the trust companies, that are going to really help allow this market to come to fruition. And so these ATSs, there's a lot of people creating ATSs for either general things or broad things. Start Engine has one, and it's focused on a variety of different private securities, not tokenized. T0 is an ATS that is focused on tokenized crypto securities. And then there are a lot of other securities that other exchanges that are focused on real estate in particular or other verticals. So the next 2 years, it's going to take a couple of years for this to actually catch fire, I think. But it's going to be a brave new world in the coming 2, 3, 4, 5 years for liquidity for private securities, for real estate interests, and for lending interests.
Right, and certainly the crowdfunding regulation moving from a 1 million cap or 1,078,000 cap to 5 million,
Huge.
and the loosening of the accredited investor standard as well,
Yep.
and even now Reg A moving from what 50 to 75 million. So
Yep.
the SEC has certainly done its part to make this to make it easier to securitize assets. So it certainly opens the door for doing more in the space with basically blockchain or distributed ledger technologies.
Yep. The promise of the Jobs Act and the democratization of capital markets and investing is now finally, with the rule changes, is finally at hand. 2021 is going to be real exciting. It's going to explode. So many things are going to be disrupted. It's going to be a blast to be part of it.
Yeah, it's really an amazing time. I mean, it feels like so much has happened already, but it's taken root. Um, so I'd like to talk a little bit about the grand vision for Prime Trust. You've spoken about it being sort of an ecosystem, but do you want to kind of maybe paint the grand vision for Prime Trust? I mean, again, maybe you could delve into Banq a little bit as well as part of that.
Well, Prime Trust provides financial infrastructure to fintech innovators. That's what we do. Everyone that wants to do something disruptive, something to change the world, uh, whether it's a new emerging broker dealer like a Robinhood, or a neo app, a banking app like Banq, or Venmo, or Cash App, or Revolut, or somebody that is helping revolutionize investing in trading cards, and Major League Baseball cards or NBA cards or football cards, or really anything that has to do with money, with finance, needs a financial institution at their foundation that they can write into for a set of services, including payment processing, wires, checks, ACH, credit card, debit card, Bitcoin, Ethereum, however you move currency from one place to another. Compliance, AML, KYC, specialized compliance for securities world, but account types, custody of assets, counterparty settlement of transactions. There's just a suite of things, debit cards. There's a suite of things that people need in order to go build their businesses. And that's what we do. So we empower fintech innovators to go change the world. We don't change the world ourselves. We're the infrastructure, we're the foundation, we're the boring plumbing that enables them to do what they're going to do.
And so, and let's focus a little bit on your T-shirt, Banq. What's the vision that you see for Banq, and what are the challenges and opportunities that you see yourself facing or taking advantage of?
Well, Banq is a new type of financial app that in some ways is similar to Venmo or Cash App or Revolut, but is really very, very different. It started as a project inside of Prime Trust to widgetize our APIs for landlords in the real estate space so they could automate getting paid, automate managing the different rental properties that they have, the accounting of them, money in, money out. And as I was whiteboarding it, it quickly became apparent that it wasn't just for real estate, but it's for a lot of other industries. It's for nonprofits. It's for charities, it's for cannabis, it's for network marketing, it's for fraternities and sororities. I mean, there's just endless industries that have pain in their banking relationships and the things they can and can't do. And a lot of them are using Venmo or they're using Cash App, and it's very kludgy. They don't really work very well for the needs of these entities, of these businesses. And my focus is always B2B. I'm really That's what I'm pretty good at. Not so much a consumer guy. So, looking at the payment pain and the organizational pain of businesses, of entities, uh, we have built Banq to solve that pain or alleviate that pain in ways that's never been done. And we're having a lot of fun putting it out. We've invested, I don't know, $7 million into it so far, and we're just getting it launched right now. We spun it out. It was a project of Prime Trust, but Prime Trust is all about financial infrastructure. Banq is a neo app, is just a different thing. It's a different company. So we spun it off to the shareholders, and we now have different staff, completely different engineering department, and it's own company now. And we think it's going to be pretty big. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's there's both the personal and the business side of it, but the customizations I think are really where it takes off. I mean, it just provides a lot more of those options that you mentioned. Whether it's QR code or specialized unlimited accounts or payment calendars or different APIs. It's just there's just it seems like you guys are putting a lot of effort into it to getting it right. So
Oh, that's for anyone listening, not viewing. It's Banq with a Q. See, it's BANQ.
BANQ. And if you're watching, then you just look at Scott's shirt if you
Yeah,
missed it.
sure.
um, I think I think it was Bitco that got recently approved for a New York trust.
Yeah,
Uh,
they
you know,
received their charter a couple of last week. They received their charter.
right, right. And so,
The same week Bitco's CEO of their trust company resigned and joined Prime Trust.
woohoo! Did you pay me for that thing or no? Actually, I did that independently. I didn't know. So that's phenomenal.
He's a good guy. We're really happy to have him with us. So,
Excellent.
no offense to Bitco. Wish him all the success in the world, but just funny sidebar.
Yep. No, definitely. But what's Prime Trust's plans with regards to New York?
Oh, we have a trust application that we filed there as well. So that is happening. What we're not doing, what a lot of people have done, is they filed OCC for a national trust charter, and we were going down that path as well. We're working with the staff at the OCC, and they're terrific. They really are. They're a great group of regulators who really are forward thinking about this space. And we pulled back at the last minute, primarily for one reason, and that's Reg W. As a national trust bank, you're subject to a lot of banking regulations. Reg W in particular makes it incredibly hard to do business with affiliates. And for us, we know that Prime Trust at some point is most likely going to be acquired. And if it's acquired by a bank, then it's not a problem. But if it's acquired, imagine if a large fintech company acquired us, but then Reg W prevented them from using us to service their different business entities because Reg W places limitations on things. And once our attorneys really fleshed that out, we decided that it just wasn't the right move for us. So what is the right move for us is to continue to be a state chartered trust company and to spin up the trust company in New York, working with the DFS, who they've been terrific to work with as well. They're a great group of regulators.
And so, what's the general like? Is there a general timeline that that people think in terms of when it comes to applying to become a with the NYSDFS for trust charter?
It really depends. A lot of people who are getting trust charters don't have any experience in banking or regulation. They're really good technology people, but they're not banking people, they're not trust people. And so they get set back quite a bit in the process because they just don't know what they're asking. They don't understand the regulation. And it takes them often a year or more to get the charter. Um, that said, we're already a chartered entity. We're getting another charter, and we have deep respect for regulation. And I employ people who were former regulators. My head of regulatory affairs, Amanda, she was the deputy banking commissioner of Wyoming. My new CCO, my new general counsel was with the Department of Justice. I have people here that were with the Securities Exchange Commission, the Treasury and the Secret Service, the OCC, the FRB. Like I have a lot of former regulators on my staff, as well as a lot of people with major banking experience from JP Morgan Chase and Green Dot and a lot of other banks. So the people who really handle the regulated aspects of what goes on at Prime Trust are themselves regulators and bankers. So they speak that language. So when we go in for a charter like with DFS, we have people there that they know and understand and respect. And so it's a much easier road for us than it might be for somebody who comes in just from pure technology perspective.
Right, right. Well, that's yeah, and I would imagine that your experience in the space. I mean, as in terms of companies that are applying to New York for a trust charter, you've got to have probably the deepest experience as it relates to crypto assets, since you were there pretty much at the beginning.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we have great technology chops. We have fantastic engineers, incredible people on the product side, and we are very good at that. And I like to say we're a software company masquerading as a financial institution. But
Yeah,
that said, we're very, very serious on our on the regulated side with everything from BSA to security, safety, and soundness, best practices. We're good at that.
excellent. And so speaking about the regulatory side, we spoke a little bit about the crowdfunding and Reg A, but what regulations do you see now that are what concerns you, and what do you see as an opportunity? What encourages you? What concerns you? In some, and virtually any regulator as it impacts your business.
Well, what I see that's good is that a lot of the regulators have been taking a much lighter touch approach to crypto, crowdfunding, and these emerging technologies and markets. A lot of people have gotten sideways with the SEC in particular, but also FinCEN. And whereas the fines usually, like FinCEN fines, are usually in the millions, for Bitco and for some of these other firms that screwed up, the fines have been in $100,000 range, which is dramatically lighter than what they usually take. The SEC has taken a wait and see approach on many tokens, and Ripple got in trouble, but you see a lot of ICOs, and to me, they're clearly securities, and people are like, no, they're tokens. Like, well, it's still a security, and the SEC just kind of let it go for a while. They're now taking action on things, which is entirely appropriate, but they're getting their arms around it. They're waiting to see, and they're not just stepping up and putting people in jail. They're stepping up and telling people to, offer rescission, and the fines are lighter than what they typically would be. So the regulators have been really good at working with people. FinCEN has been great in some of its guidance that it's given people. So, what concerns me is when we get a new administration and the first thing they do is say, oh, hey, SEC, we want you to stop the updates to the Jobs Act. And I'm like, no, it's finally real, and don't do that. And it's like, well, there could be fraud. It's like, well, since 2012, people said crowdfunding is going to be fraud. Guess what? There's 8 years later, there's no fraud. So don't stop it from growing and taking the next step to, fulfill its destiny. But the new administration, that was the first thing they did. Fortunately, the SEC said, no, we're not going to go back through a whole rulemaking process again. Thank God for that. And it's moving forward. But you never know when you're going to run into hostile regulation, and the world changes. And that's why right now there's so much room for innovation and disruption, because people like me and like so many others have the opportunity to build some really incredible businesses, because the largest businesses, the big banks, the big fintechs, are mostly sitting on the side going, oh, we don't know, we're afraid we might get in trouble, let's not do it, let's not take a risk. So we get the opportunity to build these businesses that later they'll acquire in order to get into the space. But
Hey,
it's an open playground for us right now.
yeah, no, definitely an exciting time. Um, was there anything that I didn't cover that maybe I should have covered on this episode? I mean, I'm excited to have you on. I also know you have a
Thanks.
doctor's appointment for your unfortunate accident coming up.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I have surgery next week, so oh well,
yeah, and it's your it's your right arm. So anyway,
yeah, yeah,
you just dictate.
yeah.
Fortunately, no writing on this interview. It's just a podcast, right?
Yeah, that's why no blogs are on. Right now. All my typing is one-handed. Fortunately, I don't know why your computer can't be like your phone. On my phone, I can speak, speech to text on everything. On my computer, I have to go download a program and install it. Why can't it just be part of the OS? Oh,
That's your next project.
yeah, no, I think I'll let Apple and Google deal with that.
Excellent. So Scott, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was really great to have you. If people want to learn more about everything that Prime Trust is doing, is there any? I mean, obviously you go to your website, but
Primetrust.com or banq.com, and good place to see what's happening. And of course, fundamerica.com.
and Fund America, don't forget that. So,
Yep.
well, Scott, it was great to have you on the show. Thanks so much.
All right,
And
Eric. Thanks. Appreciate it.
excellent. Take care.